Today we have the chance to have Professor Charles Ayoubi. He's professor at ESSEC Paris and just finished last year a postdoc at Harvard Business School with Professor Karim Lakhani. His expertise is on innovation and technology. He recently released a working paper called The Cybernetic Teammate, with famous co-authors like Professor Karim Lakhani or Professor Ethan Molik. This is a randomized experiment where people at Procter & Gamble worked on a real business task, with or without AI and in teams or individually. This paper shocked, surprised, intrigued, interested many people. Many people reacted to one of the key results, which was that teams or individuals who worked with AI were happier. So let's dive in this fascinating example with Charles Ayoubi to discuss the AI impact on collaborative work. Hi, Charles. It's a pleasure to have you today to discuss this really exciting paper that's created a lot of noise online already after 1 week, the Cybernetic Teammates. So would you like to tell us a bit more about the setup already of this exciting experiment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Quentin. It's a pleasure to be here. So this is something we've been working on more than a year now. It's a project that took a lot of time to put together, as you can imagine. It's this new kind of research that the Digital Data and Design Institute at Harvard is really aiming to push forward, which is instead of just like, either analyzing data in the field, taking observational data from firms and from institutions, and then not having causality. I know this is one of your pet peeves, if not the one, or doing lab experiments with no, like external validity because it's only inside and oftentimes very often done with students. You talked about weird and like all this thing with like you always have the same population. We're trying to do something a bit in the middle, and this is the kind of experiments that we call the kind of research that we call lab in the field. We try to bring the lab mentality, approach, neatness of causality of running experiments, the same way a pharmaceutical lab would do it with like, treatment and control, by bringing inside companies in the environment with the people inside the company. So that's what we call. So it's often funny, like people say this is a lab experiment and others says this is a field experiment. It's because it's kind of this in between setting, and so we like to call it lab in the field. And so after like this little introduction, what we wanted to do is go a step further in the analysis of understanding how AI is going to change the way we work. And so that's why we need to go inside these companies. You're probably aware of the paper that was done a bit more than a year ago, the JACT Frontier, that was done by the Digital and Data Institute, also with some other colleagues. The question was quite simple. It was trying to understand what's the impact of AI on consultants. So again, lab in the field, but with a very simple setting. Is just saying, the treatment, the drug that you give to randomly to certain people is just, they have access to ChatGPT and they can be more productive, do more tasks, spend less time, and have better quality. And then the people, like the other side is the control side, and people like are doing what they would do normally. So this was like the initial setting. Here we wanted to really take it to another level. And our first realization was to say that the Boston Consulting Group example is people working alone, which is maybe sometimes happening, but a lot of the work inside companies actually happen when people work together in teams. And so we wanted to understand a bit better, how AI is affecting teamwork. And we wanted to see also something else, which is, like how does, we actually had a fight before, not a fight, but like an argument with the co-authors before starting the paper, is like, should we call AI a team member or not? And this was kind of the birth of the paper. I still remember this call where we were like 5 people on the call and we were chatting, and like some people were saying, yes, like we should call the person with AI a team. And some other people were saying, no, it's not a team. It's a person alone. So it's not a team. And this is kind of how the paper was born. So that was the motivation. And so the idea was to say, okay, but if we want to study that, we can't just do people with AI, people without AI. We can't do just teams with AI, teams without AI. We need to do the full spectrum. to understand to what extent is AI a teammate or not. And that's what made us land on the cybernetic teammate title. And so we ended up with 4 conditions. So the baseline, person alone without any AI. And then, seeing, okay, what is the impact of having a team without AI? And then a person with AI, and then a team with AI. And we had the 4 conditions that we had to randomize on with around 800 people participating in the study.
And it was done with Procter & Gamble in the
Yes,
US?
yes, yeah. Yes. So actually, the participants are from, so yeah, that's a very, very good question. The participants were actually from 3 different continents. So we did it over like 3 different days. So we had some people in Latin America, North America, and Europe.
But
We
teams were physically together
No,
with
so no
for
teams.
humans. Oh,
No,
wow.
everything was done online. And
Oh,
this
wow.
is actually one of the characteristics of the study is that we tried to replicate the way they work inside the company. The idea, again, of the lab in the field was trying to replicate the way they work inside the company. And the company is actually dispatched. It's like a lot of the people in R&D work in Latin America. Uh, some work in the US, but even in the US, there's different labs. Some are in the UK. Switzerland has a very big, actually in Geneva. We had a lot of participants from Geneva. And so just for time zone reasons, because the experiments was over a full day, we ended up doing 3 different days, doing the exact same experiment for 3 days. One of them was in Europe, so we had to wake up at 3 a.m. to start the day at 9 a.m. in Europe. It was a bit, like tough, the kind of things you do for research. And the 3 a.m. wake up was just after a full day of doing it in the US. But yes, all the participants were online, which mimics the way they work very oftentimes together. They have like a setting where they work on teams. And yeah,
But
so
what
so
happened during this day?
okay, so that's a very good question. So we worked actually for a few months. So we started working on that in around like January last year, and we only did the experiment in May. Like it took this is the kind of things that experiments require, especially when you want to do it inside companies. There's a huge amount of work before you do the experiment because you want everything to be perfectly well organized on the day off. So there's all the operational things, but there's of course all the, like the things we care about as academics, the randomization and making everything balanced. So we had quite some work with Fabrizio, mostly like we were working on all these elements in close collaboration with the company. And so what was the day about, to go back to your question? It was really, so starting at 9 a.m. in the morning and until 5 p.m. in the evening, we basically like went inside the company. We did a big event that so people were invited to do a hackathon. Basically, the idea was telling them, and they do these events regularly to try to create new products. So it was like bringing them and saying like Harvard is organizing this hackathon, HBS is organizing the hackathon inside the company. And we're trying to like, develop new ideas.
So they are not aware that they are in an experiment, or
So actually, we did tell them, as researchers, we're going to study some things, but it's the kind of things that actually people forget very quickly. And it's very funny because so
but
we
it's
were
a good
there.
thing, right? It's rather
Oh yeah,
positive,
yeah.
and I mean that's often made just for people listening. It's how you do it, because actually, if you put too much emphasis that the behavior will be analyzed by researchers, you create this Hawthorne effect that basically people will behave differently because they are basically being watched and analyzed. So I think yeah, it's important
Exactly,
to share this.
and that's actually so. Not to take too much credit, I think it's a feature that is much easier when you do a lab in the field kind of experiment. Because when you do lab in the field, people are in their environment, and actually the people from P&G participated in organizing the thing with us. They were with faces they know. Everything seemed very typical of what they do. They would just had like a few Harvard people, but the way we sold it is that as Harvard people, we were here, just to organize the thing. We also gave them some training, so that they feel that they get some value, and we gave them some feedback in the end around the use of AI after we did like the main task. So they felt they also got some value and they learned some stuff about how to ideate with AI. It was like kind of a full day where they experiment with things. But it's interesting because, of course, you have So the total is like, in total, we had around 850 people. You see in the paper that we're below 800 is because some people were not randomized. We had to like not randomize them because they couldn't do the full day, or like there was like some constraint on them. But you have to imagine, so it's around 900 people. So say around between 250 and 300 every day that you have to manage. Uh, and so, you know, some people get lost or whatever. And it's really interesting to see that uh, for them, like, you know, they very quickly forget it's
Mhm.
anything to do with an experiment. They're just worried about doing their thing well. And like, you know, they want to know they understood the task properly. And, you know, because like, so what we did is we told them like, you need to develop a new idea, and the best ideas will be promoted. And actually we're now like working on you know, selecting them, and they can present them to their top management so that it has some value for them. It's something that inside the company is very important, that you get visibility for your work. And so like presenting to top management is clearly an enticing thing. So we also wanted to make it real in this way by making it exciting for them to want to give their best, you know, whatever the condition they were in.
So during the whole day, you have this introduction, basically helping them to understand the design, the plan of this hackathon. Then you teach all of them about AI. They all got the prompts class, prompt engineering class.
So that's actually like a key thing that we had, right? In the sense that we didn't want the controls. You were talking about Hawthorne effect and all these things. We didn't want the controls to be too prompted in terms of AI.
Mm,
We wanted it to be
I see.
a proper placebo. But at the same time, we knew that, you know, we couldn't, especially like politically and in terms of the you know, the way we're organizing that, you know, having half of them getting the treatment and the other half not. You know,
Yeah.
they would have felt like, oh wait, what, you got like a training on AI and we didn't. This is unfair, blah blah.
But one
So we
group
wanted.
will anyway won't use AI, but this is known, right?
So here's the key is we just told them that, you know, because there are too many people, we will have like different flows of the day. And so what we did is that the thing that we care about is the morning. The thing that everything that's in the paper is just the 4 hours in the morning, a bit more than 4 hours actually, is when they're actually doing the task.
Mm.
And then for the controls, what we do is we give them the AI training after they do the task. And we give them an opportunity actually, so that's something that's not at all in the paper, but we give them the opportunity to take 1 hour more to improve their idea. And one thing we're looking into now is seeing how good are the ideas of people who started without AI and then had 1 hour to refine and use it.
I would
So that's
love
like a
to know this. But
totally different.
for
I
many
don't want
reasons
to,
that we'll discuss later, but I would love to know this.
yeah, I prefer not to say it publicly because it's something that we're still working on, but I can give you some hints on that. But
So
the
no, but
results are
maybe
interesting.
don't say anything we cannot share, or I'll cut on the post production. But but
No, I mean
that's very interesting.
it's just to tell you that actually we made it even into a feature of something that we were interested in studying to see like,
Yeah,
you know, how good
yeah,
the
exactly.
quality gets. And it's a key question I think that you're interested in. I know in like if future podcasts you like your future episodes you want to work on this, like how how does AI affect learning? And I think I do think that the sequence matters. We all experience that, right? You're much more likely to sleep at the wheel and to push yourself less and to engage less if you go straight into AI versus actually trying to think about the problem and then using AI as kind of a refinement in the end. So that's something that, you know, we're very interested in, but it's a totally different paper. But it also allowed us to solve the problem of of the treatment versus
Yeah,
control.
yeah, of
Is that
course.
everyone got the same thing at the end of the day?
Yeah. So and the final product, the output is what? Is a document one pager?
So the final product is, so this we worked in close collaboration with P&G. They have a process to develop new products. I don't want to go into too much detail. Of course, there's like you know, elements of confidentiality. We say a bit about what, you know, what kind of like innovation they do, but basically they need to develop a new product that could be commercialized inside the company. And the final product is really a list of 4 to 5 items that they consider key to doing that. So really, like very broadly, it's typical innovation, like what's the problem that you're trying to solve? What kind of solution are you finding for that? What kind of resources do you need to implement it? And how would you, put it in place? What would it require? What are the challenges? Like this is the kind of things. But it really follows a framework that, they are very familiar with, at least people who do this kind of job. Because that's another twist to the story, is that almost half of the participants are people who do this regularly, who are used to developing these kind of products.
Because in the study you have R&D people and commercial people, just to also tell the audience.
This is another differentiation. So yeah, it makes it a bit complicated, but basically around half of the participants are R&D, as you said, R&D. And the other half are like commercial people. They're like marketing and kind of commercial functions. But another layer, so you have like a horizontal aspect and a vertical aspect. Both, like some R&D people do this kind of thing. Like they develop products really. And some commercial people do this thing. They also develop product, but focusing more on the commercial aspect. And they very oftentimes work together actually to do this. But within R&D and marketing, this is like the vertical aspect, you have people who do this regularly and people who actually don't do that. So inside R&D, you have around half of the functions of R&D, half of the participants of R&D who do something else, like inside the company. Like maybe they're very focused on like basic research. They don't really work on the like developing product per se. So that's something completely new for them, or like something they're not very familiar with. And same for people in commercial. You have people who are really, at the end of the pipeline. So they don't really work on developing the new product, or people who are sales, etc. So we really had like a big diversity. And so inside R&D and commercial, you have this kind of also vertical differentiation. People who are very used to, so you have 2 types of expertise. You have the domain expertise. What kind of knowledge do you have? You're an R&D person, technical person, or you're a commercial person. And then you have this vertical aspect, which is a task expertise. Are you familiar with doing this task or not? And we play with both actually, and we have results on both that are quite interesting.
So now we kept the suspense for more than 10 minutes for the audience. We know well the results, but let's start maybe with the first results. What was about the performance, the quality between these 4 groups?
So as you said, I think we played enough suspense. Before going into performance, I just want to say, yeah, the paper actually is one result. I agree with you, like there's a lot of results, but the paper is one big headline that is in the title, as the cybernetic team made. Basically, it's the starting point of the paper for us, is like, is AI a partner or not? Can we call AI a teammate, or is AI just a tool like it always was? And we don't bring a final answer. We don't say AI is a teammate. But what we try to document is a series of results that suggest that AI is much closer to a colleague than to Microsoft Excel or other tools that you can use.
But here there is kind of an extrapolation. Basically, your conclusion is based on the results who match basically, but we'll have to explain this a bit more. But basically, this conclusion is based on the fact that individuals with AI will behave similarly on different dimensions, including happiness, positive emotions, negative emotions, to people who work with another human being. And then there's a kind of a step to say
I'm super happy you're saying that. I was very careful at never saying that we conclude that AI is a human. I just say exactly what you said, is that on the dimensions that we look at, the working with AI is much more similar on these dimensions to working with another human than to working with another tool. And on these dimensions, and I fully agree with you, it doesn't mean that AI is a human. And of course, it's not on so many other dimensions that we don't measure in the paper. But on dimensions that are quite relevant for companies, we do find more similarities between the group that is the condition that is a team without AI and a person with AI, than with a person with AI and a person without AI. So on these dimensions, and as you said, we have a list of results that goes in this direction. And the first one is something that all companies care about, is that the performance of a person with AI is at par, if not slightly better, but not significantly better, to the one of a team. But both of them are significantly better than a person working alone.
Teams were of how many people?
Two people.
Two. Yeah.
People.
Okay. So it's two people versus one person with AI, basically. Or
Exactly.
two people plus AI for the
We also
AI
have
team.
two plus AI. I'll say a word about that a bit later, but in this paper, we didn't really focus a lot on this last condition, which is a team with AI. Most of the paper is comparing a person with AI to a team without AI, so two people without AI. And we're comparing these two to the baseline, which is a person without AI. And actually, one of the first things that we were kind of reassured by, and that P&G was, like, okay, it's good to have validation of that, is the way they do things, which is usually when they do this exercise, they always have one person from R&D and one person from the commercial side, is that the team does better. So they're right to do it this way. Like, it was kind of a validation. Yeah, before we go into anything, forget
I
about
see.
AI.
I see.
Teams do perform better. They do, better quality
Yeah. So main
innovation
result
products.
was basically baseline, let's say, alone. Then you do slightly better if you're human with AI, but you do at par alone with AI as a team of humans.
No. The
Okay.
baseline is a person alone.
Yeah.
They do a certain level of quality. And then what we find, and that's what I'm saying where P&G was reassured, is that when you go from a person alone to two people, forget about AI, just one person alone to two people, we get an uptick of quality. So working in a team increases your performance. So P&G is totally right to make people work in teams
Yeah,
because you
no, yeah.
increase the performance. And then this team, what we see is that when you look at the person with AI, it's not significantly different from a team. They have the same level of performance, and both of them are significantly better than the baseline, which is a person.
And even if it's not the main result, what about team with AI on this main
So
result of quality?
team with AI is actually not significantly different than the two other conditions.
Hmm. Okay.
So it's kind of, like we both taught Micro 101. It's kind of some form of, if you believe the first part, which is that AI is kind of a teammate in this regard. So the last condition is kind of three people, right? It's two people plus AI, so it's kind of a team of three. And so it might be some kind of decreasing return to scale. So we do see in terms of numbers, it is higher, but it's not significant. It's not significant. There are many reasons for that. One of them is actually that there's like it's hard to improve the quality beyond a certain level, especially in the way we're doing it, in the sense that it's like experts evaluating that. They have a grid. It's hard to do that. The second thing is that teams with AI had more variability. So some of them did really bad, but they were the best at doing really, really well. And that's one of the results of the paper.
Yeah.
It's the only thing about this last condition that we talk about
Yeah.
is that maybe so a lot of people said, oh, you're saying we want to fire everyone. Not at all. It's the opposite. Because, this is an innovation task. And we know from P&G and from everyone, in innovation, what you care about is the right tail. Is getting solutions that are really amazing. We don't really care about average results. I know you talk about that a lot. So many studies are just about average results. Most of our results are average results. But in innovation, you need to go further than that. And you need to be in the top 10% of solutions. And if you look at this top 10%, then teams plus AI do really, really well. They're significantly better than all the others. And they are 3 times more likely than the baseline to be
Do
the
you
top
know
10%.
I was very curious about these results. And honestly, I would say my confirmation bias made me skeptical. Not skeptical, but in the sense I was looking for a loophole or something because in some sense, I'm unhappy with the results. To be personally, on a personal
Okay.
opinion, because I feel often that's also based on the previous discussion I had on the podcast, that basically it tends to standardized to you might make breakthrough, but through a similar path. Mainly because here you're using one unique AI. And just one follow-up question. I was very curious, and probably it will just again destroy my prior. Um, do you know the best among the top 10 best solution, for example? Not the 10 percentile, the 10%, but the top 10%. Not, sorry, the
10
10,
solutions.
10 best solutions among all of them if they were all with AI, over proportion of AI. Maybe it's not statistically significant. Maybe I'm just looking for as I said, proof where there is nothing to look at.
So you're bringing up a good point, and actually we did do several thresholds, also quantile regressions and different things to confirm this, because 10% could be considered kind of a bit arbitrary. Like not all the thresholds give the same result, obviously, but overall the trend is consistent, even with 5%, so which goes close to, because we have 550 solutions. So if you take the top 5%, that's like 22. So it's not 10, but it's like 20 solutions, let's say. So you still have solutions from the team without AI that are there. Going to your point, we still have some diversity, but there is a higher proportion, again, not significant at all. There the power is too small. So for the top 5%, the power is too small, so it's not significant.
No, of course. No, of course. So that's
But
not.
we still have
Yeah.
descriptively a
Yeah.
higher proportion of these solutions. And I see where you're going. I see what you're thinking about. And there's actually one graph in the paper, one of the last graphs that no one sees, around the diversity of ideas.
I was going to ask exactly this question.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I missed it in the paper.
Yeah, there's like actually a lot of things around that. As you can imagine, we have so much data actually that we're trying to use to go more deep into the mechanisms of what's happening. But I'm going to talk about two graphs that no one is seeing in the paper, but that I personally really like and that make me feel better about all the priors and the things that you're talking about. And they talk to a lot of literature actually that's been published recently on Gen AI. The first graph is reproducing a result that has been shown by Anil Doshi and Hauser, that was, I think, published recently in Science Advances, which is that people using AI have less diversity of ideas. If you just look at, using different, measures of similarity, etc. The diversity of people who use the AI, they have less diversity in ideas, which doesn't mean it's not diverse, but it's less diverse than people not using AI. And actually the diversity between, person alone without AI or a team without AI is similar. They're the highest. You're slightly less diverse when you're using AI. And then we wanted to check, like what if we just give this exercise very naively to AI? So we did a test actually where we made AI do this exercise completely naively. So we just fed it the task, fed it the solution, which didn't give any instruction. We just like gave it the task. And we took out the final output from AI. And we did it for like the same number of solutions. We had like around like 100 solutions done with AI alone. And the diversity here was super low, super low. And it was much lower than the people who were using AI. So the human plus AI was much closer in the diversity to people without AI than it was for AI only. So people did manage to push the AI to bring more diversity. So that's the first thing. That's the first graph. So it's kind of reassuring. It's like, no, I mean, like the interaction does bring something, at least in terms of diversity. These people were not just, asking the AI to do it for them and then like just sitting. Some people did that. Some people did that. But that's something we can check actually very easily. And that's another graph I wanted to talk about, which is we looked at their prompts. We have all their prompts. We know, like what they typed into the AI. And so we know how they interacted with AI, and we know the output of the AI. So we can see to what extent did they just copy paste the output. And so looking at the copy paste, actually, the proportion of people who just copied the thing is not that high. So there's a lot of modification that happened in the process. And I want to note that, so I think the proportion, you can check it in the paper, but if I'm not mistaken, it's between 20 and 25% of people who like really just copied what came out. But I want to note that even this is not people just giving it to AI. Because maybe, you know, like they wrote the whole thing, fed it to AI, asked it to, you know, correct the typos.
Exactly.
And then the output is basically their
No,
thing without the
exactly.
typos.
Yeah.
And so for these people, they basically did everything, but it would come up for us as like 100% they copied.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why we're trying to go a bit deeper into really seeing what kind of prompts did they use. And there we're like seeing really interesting things. It's totally qualitative so far, but we're trying to build up a more quantitative analysis. It's very interesting to see the diversity of ways people did things. And so you have people who really use AI as what we would call a sounding board. So it was really fascinating to read some of the interactions. Some of the people who did really well didn't even ask AI to do a single thing. So AI didn't produce anything. They were just testing ideas on AI. So basically, they come up with something, and then they ask, oh, what do you think of this? How can I improve it? But AI doesn't produce any actual content. And they chat with it like, oh, give me, like, they don't even say, so it's not even like, give me a nice name. It's more like, oh, suppose you're a customer, would you buy this thing? And they're just like testing their idea. And it was really fascinating to see, because like at first with Fabrizio, we were surprised by, we had like almost the same amount of people, around 20%, who didn't copy a single sentence. We tried to do it at the sentence level. So we're like, you know, but these people prompted a lot. Why? What happened there?
Yes, yes.
And then we checked some of these people. We were like looking, okay, this person didn't copy anything. Is it true? Is it a mistake in our algorithm? And then we checked a few of them, and indeed, they didn't copy anything because the questions that we're asking were just using it as a thought partner, just chatting with it, you know, but they really felt a lot of agency, as in like, I'm doing the work. You're just here for, you know, helping me go forward and like validating ideas much more than producing ideas. And we were very surprised because we thought, you know, these people would just use the AI to do the work for them. But it was very interesting. And some of these people did actually really well. So it was very fascinating. And that's something we're investigating. It's like
Okay.
the type of use. It's very hard to do it quantitatively.
Yeah,
because
of course. Yeah.
you need to develop a good measure of what does it mean to, you know, interact versus not. But yeah, but that's something we're really interested in.
So back to the diversity example, because indeed that was where I was going. So in the one of the last episodes that I filmed was about this experiment that I already shared with you with this business professor in a business school sharing real business case here. It was on LinkedIn to his students. He did this for the last 10 years, and always they have to pick a solution. In the business case studies, you have either A, either B. And they pick a solution and they debate back in class to defend their case, basically. And for the first time in 10 years, where there always have been great debates, you have the whole class, two different independent class. Everybody in both class said A. And he was shocked. He really froze. He was like really shocked. What the hell? And basically then he thought a bit and asked who used ChatGPT. 90% of the class raised their hand. Probably everybody did it, but only 9 out of 10 people raised their hand and assumed it. And then basically we had this whole conversation about breakthrough, about innovation. And I really want also to go down this path before talking about other result of your paper, because you're working on innovation. And that was my rationale for or my question for the top 10 solution, is that it might help to improve, to do good, to do well, to do top 10. But what about the real breakthrough that you have to completely think out of the box? And actually, I was writing this after the podcast I filmed with about this topic, about innovation, thought, diversity. recently I had this eureka moment. I shared this with you about
Yeah.
causality. Like I'm obsessed with this for the last 15 years, thinking it's day and night about this. But these eureka moments, like really happen very far from Gen AI. And I could not see any direct relationship with my exchange with these tools. It was really, I was running and suddenly things started to make sense, to connect, and the other I was in bed. So it's really far from the computer. And this echoes also other podcasts I filmed and recorded and discussion basically with about critical thinking and about learning, where basically one downside of AI is that it gives answer constantly, it feeds answers, while potentially, arguably, true innovation arise when you are in this kind of, to cite the first person on the podcast, this void where basically you're unsure, you're not sure if you have the answer or not. Something is happening, you're thinking about something else, but there are some backgrounds work in your brain that makes unique connections. And so here it's very interesting to also highlight these results that I find fascinating actually, is that within the people without AI, you had more diversity. It was more different. You went into directed different directions. And in addition, I mean, it's also reassuring or interesting to see that people plus AI also pushed the solution in a more diverse way compared to AI alone. So just wanted to share this, and what do you think? Because also one of the thing we discussed with Xavier, who went on the podcast, was maybe in the future true innovators, like someone who will write a symphony will go in the mountains. Maybe true innovators will say, okay, I don't interact with Gen AI at all for the whole process, or maybe for years, to avoid having your mind, your opinion shaped in some very pervasive way in some direction. Just very curious because you're an expert in innovation. What do you think about all this?
I have so many things to say.
Go for
I
it.
love everything you're saying. I just want to say this is a really nice discussion because I think you're touching on all the really the big challenges for the next 10 years, let's say, in innovation, right? And we know how important innovation is. And I'm fascinated by all the things that you mentioned. And I do think it's very interesting. And actually, just yesterday, I was giving a class on, AI in business um, at ESSEC, and I was talking about some of these subjects, and it's great also to get, the students, the future workforce, have a position on that. So just a few things. The first thing is, um, you are saying that, you got your ideas at sleep, etc., which I think is great. And it probably was always the case. If we take the starting point that AI is a teammate, then like in the same way, AI is kind of an average, weird average of like so many people that posted things on the internet and in books, we know that now. There are all these discussions about scraping copyrighted books, but that's another debate. So it's kind of an average opinion. And so if you are talking with a group of people who are more or less like the average of what many people think, we know there's so many experiments way before AI suggesting, that you are influenced. There are like some crazy experiments that are some kind of peer pressure experiments where people say absurd things, like they have two sticks, one is long, one is short. And if like everyone else is saying that the short one is the long one, you feel kind of compelled to say, yes, yes. And so AI is a bit the same. It's just this extra opinion. And of course, it is an average. And so of course it's going to push you to the average, a good average, as you said, like that's why actually already in the BCG paper that we mentioned earlier, the Jack Trontier, what they see is that it makes on average everyone better, but it makes actually some of the best people worse because they sleep at the wheel. That's another paper by Fabrizio. It's one of the big challenges with AI, but that is also true with people. It's just going with the flow. And so one thing I was telling my students actually, and you're an economist, you're familiar with a lot of the economic effects, the Jevon effects, the cost of something going down. Today, the cost of generating ideas, of generating text, well-written text without any typos, of generating, like well-sounding stuff, has gone down to zero. Like super cheap. Anyone can generate like a nice essay that sounds nice. So this maybe now it still has some value, but I give it maybe like 1 or 2 years where it's going to become totally worthless. And in a way, I'm very happy about that because, like, this is a personal feeling, but I feel like, this doesn't have really a lot of value to make something that sounds good. But what this does too is that it makes people who are capable of taking it to the other level increase their value. This is the O-ring theory. So there's actually quite some research on that. When you like make everything so much smoother and easier and automatized, these like bottlenecks become hugely important. So like for Amazon, their O-ring theory is that, they optimize so many things with AI, predictive AI, that they're obsessed with the last mile. And the value of managing the last mile well, just like skyrocketed. It's much higher than when like people were okay with receiving something 1 week later. Since they automatized and improved everything, it became much cheaper to do everything so much better. The value of this last bit became so much higher. And with AI, it's the same thing. We should stop blaming AI for our inability to push it further. And that's one of the things I love about our results is we did have participants who, without understanding any of that, maybe because they had some, like more defiance toward AI, or they didn't feel like they should rely on it, or felt like this was cheating, who took it to another level and didn't just stick to what it was giving them. And so going back to what you were saying in the beginning, if we take AI as a partner, it's just a partner like any other. But at the end of the day, you decide what you do with it. If you just want to be lazy, which is super easy and which is what 90% of the people will do, then yes, you will end up with, baseline better result, but that are not great. So we will have a problem with innovation, but the innovators will still be the people who take it to the other level. And that could be done with or without AI. So it could be done when you're running, but it doesn't mean that AI, so it could disturb the process if you're too exposed to it. But it's your role, it's your responsibility to decide what you do with it. It's like what they say about a lot of technologies. It's not the technology that is bad, it's what people do with it. And it's also true with AI. If you use it as a way to explore, and this goes two ways. It goes by taking yourself out of it, so taking sometimes not to use AI, but also by pushing the AI in different directions. And that's what we see with the AI only. If you just take it naively and you ask it to do the whole work, which is super attractive, you see it like, oh my God, it does the job, it does something quite good without me doing any effort, just like pushing an enter button.
Yeah.
So it's very attractive to be lazy.
Exactly.
But the thing is that this laziness is today still has some value, but this value is fading away by the day. So if you just rely on this laziness and be like, okay, AI is going to do it, you're going to find yourself at a point where what you're doing has zero value. And I still see that AI is just going to push us to realize that the real value is in our ability to push AI further, to know how to use it, to not take it at face value, to iterate, and also to go back to exposing yourself to diverse views and not just this average that AI is giving you. So I don't know if this answers your question.
Yeah, so I had many follow-ups. So, but I think of course, it's very insightful. So one is that indeed, as an economist, we both know we are not rational. I mean, many people know this, but it's well studied in economics. And here is also where it might be problematic, in particular for students who try to acquire knowledge. And in this experiment with Eric Klopfer that I discussed, MIT prof, basically he observed that the students who had the better AI in the experiment, they had to do a task and they knew they had a closed book exam afterwards. And it was on coding, a code they didn't know, a language they didn't know, Fortran. And basically the one with the better AI, even if they knew they had the test, they performed poorly afterwards. They basically, due to the fact that we are not rational, they still used the technology and could not make up for the shortcuts they took compared to the group without AI who used only traditional methods like Google and who struggled and took more time to do the task, but then basically they did way better in the closed book exam because this friction of learning was hard for them to replicate or to find once they started working with AI. And I think that's also where I scale, because as we tend as humans to be lazy and take these shortcuts, it might be a problem, right? It might be a problem due to the availability of these tools, and in particular connected to something else, because you mentioned that it's kind of a teammate who adds an additional opinion. But there's a difference between AI and humans. One is the infinite patience and availability and the speed of these tools, which creates also is beneficial in some sense, but might be destructive, because if innovation, learning arise in this friction environment where you wait, where you're stuck, here, if you overuse the technology, again, it's how you use it. Point taken. Really point taken, but I'm also accepting that it's you were going to say this, but it's also
No, not at all. No.
okay, but it's also tying back to the fact that we don't always make the rational choice. That's something in particular as an educator. You're also teaching to many people every year. That I'm a bit scared. I'm not sure how people will keep learning and evolving and innovate.
And contrary to what you were saying, I think it's good to be scared. I think it's good. And as you said, AI is very particular in a certain sense. It's a different technology, but just like Google was a very different technology than computers, and just like, electricity was a very different technology than the steam engine. So every technology comes with so much promise. It brings amazing new possibilities. I mean, you just have to think. The other day I was reading about, the Chicago Fair at the end of the 19th century, and it was the first fair that was fully managed by electricity. And you should imagine the amazement of people with the whole city lit with electricity. Like for them, it was like fantastic. And we're in a similar moment with this, like, I think a completely generational technology. It's a GPT, not in the sense of generative transformers, but in a general purpose technology, which is a fantastic thing with acronyms. So it's a general purpose technology, just like electricity and computers. And every single general purpose technology brings so much potential, so many new possibilities. It invents new businesses, so many things, but it always comes with caveats. And I think as you said, as teachers, as educators, we need to be aware of these and to ask ourselves, completely revisit the way we teach. And that's something I always say to my colleagues. It's our responsibility to also not be lazy and want to do things the old way. We need to rethink the way we're doing things. I think it's really interesting to read today what math teachers thought when the calculator came in and how opposed to it they are. Today, it's just like an element of, we had to adapt. And when the calculator came in, it brought a lot of problems because people stopped calculating. And it's good for your brain to try to do, like, what is 7 times 49? It's good because it makes your brain work in a certain way. And everyone was so afraid that we're going to lose this ability. But even if you go 2,000 years back, there's an example I love, is like there's actually some writings by Plato who was against writing, because he was saying as soon as we start writing, we're going to forget everything. Because when we talk, we have to memorize, because if our memory doesn't keep the record, then it's gone. Now that we can write, so we're going to stop doing the effort of memorizing, and we're just going to keep it in books. And so people are going to become completely incapable of memorizing anything. So writing is super dangerous. And so every single technology, even going back to writing, it brings a bunch of scary moments. And I think Gen AI is scary, and we have to adapt. But sometimes we're just a bit too focused on the shifting moments. When the calculator came in, it did screw up a lot of things. We had to readapt to rethink the way we're doing things. No one was doing exams the same way after a few years. Now it's the same thing. We need to rethink the way we do things. I don't think, again, AI is the problem. I do think it brings a bunch of problems, but exactly like the internet. I mean, Google was fantastic. When I talk with my parents and they tell me, like, when Google came in, it completely revolutionized the way they understand knowledge. Because for them, the value was in knowing things. Like, you go to university to learn facts mostly. You want to learn, what's the name of this bone? Both my parents are doctors. What's the name of this thing, this ligament? And then from one day to the next, all this information became completely available. Any random person in the world could just Google this thing and know exactly what's the name and not do any mistake. And so they were like, Why are we still learning? They had to completely rethink. And what we see is that they had to develop completely different skills. And they realized that it's not about just knowing facts, it's about connecting facts. And the value came from your ability to connect the dots. So you can have all the information in the world. The value came from your critical thinking. And I think we're at a similar, redefining moment where today it's an extra step. It's like connecting dots is easy. You can connect dots in so many ways. And that sounds nice. So where is the value? It's the same thing. The value of just connecting dots just went down. So very soon, we will stop as a society to give it value. Now we're like in the shifting moments, you're seeing that. You're like, no one's going to do an effort because we're still valuing connecting the dots. We're still valuing this kind of like cheap ability to just write something that looks nice because this was valuable for so many years. But very soon, given how cheap it is, when people realize how easy it is to produce, and we're already starting like now we're in the transition moment, we're going to be, okay, this has zero value. I'm not going to pay you for it. I'm not going to give you a good grade for it as a teacher. So it's going to be worthless. As soon as we realize how worthless this is, we're going to try to shift towards where the value is. And this value is going to come partially from the things that are going to create innovation. It's taking it to the other level, your ability to use AI in novel ways, to push it, to make it give you something new, but also your ability to disconnect from AI and go on a run. And maybe this is, you're going to be the one bringing the most value because you're capable of actually disconnecting and not being lazy and just not making AI do the job for you. This is how you're going to distinguish yourself and bring something that is different. So I just think the system of value needs some little time to change, but I'm not afraid. And I think as educators, it's our job to realize this sooner rather than later and make students understand that by not showing any value to things that AI can do easily, we're going to make them realize, look, this is worthless. Today, we're still giving value to what was important 5 years ago, which is writing something well and nice and, doing a homework that, sounds well and is well-sourced and stuff. Today, this is so easy to do. And I was telling it to my students yesterday. I just said, I don't want anyone reading the slides. So they have a final project next week. I told them, like, this is worthless. Like, it's so easy to just have, like, nice-looking slides with text that sounds nice and everything. I said, if you do that, you're just not passing for me. I want you to have slides where there's, like, no words, and I want you to give me personality. The value of being a good presenter, of bringing energy into your presentation, this is something that AI can do. That's the value of these kind of things is going to skyrocket because all the things that we used to value now are very easy to do.
So again, many things that I would react, but to one short and one I'll turn back to you and to the paper, actually. I think it's the perfect connection. One is indeed when I think about my own career, I invest in things that I just try to imagine way more powerful AI and think what can be substituted and what can't. And that's why I spend so much time educating, spending time in classrooms, doing keynotes, workshops with people, because indeed they come to me for the energy, for what's happening in the room, the whole magic, the human connection that won't be replaced. And I think when you think about your career, including in particular for young professional, it's very important to think about this. I mean, you have McKinsey, who, if I'm not mistaken, created the junior consultant GPT. And basically, you have access to this basic knowledge, general knowledge, which links actually perfectly to the follow-up question. Because in the paper, you also show that it breaks silos. And you can explain me a bit more on this. But what I was surprised is that one of the popular comments on Nathan Malik post about your paper was that, so what? Now we just need generalists and not specialists. But I think it's exactly the opposite. It's rather you can have access to this general knowledge, but you actually value more and will value more in society people who spend 20 years doing one specific thing and who still have a comparative advantage, who are able to judge the quality of the output of these LLMs. And so I think it's the opposite. Like you will have access to general knowledge, but you want the very specialized people who can then use these tools to also have general good knowledge about other things. But can you tell us more first about these results quickly and how it connects to what I just mentioned, and your opinion, if it will increase the value of people specialized in something or not?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick because I think, knowing us, we could go for another 2 hours. So very quickly on the result, actually, remember what I was saying about the type of skills, both the vertical and the horizontal skills, so R&D versus marketing, and being familiar with this task versus not. What we see is that people using AI look much more like a team where the two skills exist. And so one of the things that we see is like, commercial people, if they are alone, they just do very commercially driven solutions. Technical people, when they're alone, they do very technical solutions. And if you put them in a team, they do solutions that are balanced. People with AI, whether they're commercial or technical, they look exactly the same and they look the same as team, which is they do solutions that are balanced. And so that's another way in which AI is a teammate. It's like it acts like a teammate. It gives you this complementary knowledge that you don't have. So going to your point on like, what do we need? Does this mean that we don't need? So there are actually two answers to that. The first one is, and something also that I often tell my students, and I think it's important to keep in mind, most of the value from AI, and Gen AI in particular, which is very different from predictive AI, come from its ability to be very human-like. And actually was trained in a very human-like way with neural networks, just these heuristics that are fed in over and over again. And the reason why it's so amazing is because it's very human-like. But being human-like means that you're going to do mistakes. And that's, the thing that everyone was talking about when ChatGPT came out, is the amount of confabulation it does. And you kept on saying, and I love that, you said, but humans do mistakes too. So AI, what we realized is like, to make the most human-like AI, we had to make it human-like by making it do mistakes. And probably Gen AI will always do mistakes. The moment it will stop doing mistakes, it will stop being cool. So like the value comes from the same thing. It's really two double-edged swords. You want it to be cool and valuable and like do things that are valuable, then it will do mistakes. If we take this as a starting point, then experts are super important. Why? Because I always tell to my students, like, you need to filter in and filter out with AI. If you want to be able to filter out, you need the knowledge to judge what's coming out. And so if you're just not very expert, you see something coming out. So yes, our market, like commercial people, and included some R&D elements, and they made it a bit more technical. But maybe some of the elements were not realistic, because AI, said, oh yeah, you can do this material or you can do this thing. How can you judge that? You need the commercial, you need the R&D knowledge. So without even going into people who have 20 years of knowledge, having the ability to judge the output of AI, talking about, the skills that are going to become so much more important in the future, this is the skill that's going to be really important. Your ability to judge the output. So that's going to skyrocket in terms of value. And this only comes from you having the expertise. So we're not saying that expertise becomes worthless. It's the same when you code. So a lot of people are saying you won't need to code anymore. No, actually, coding has increased in value because it's your ability to be able to still understand the code when it comes out, because it's going to do mistakes sometimes. And if you have no clue, you're going to be feeding it to AI and say, it's not working. Why is it not working?
Oh,
And
it's
you might be
working and
creating.
it's worse. So basically, also in my advisory role, exactly due of this, I've seen companies running algorithm that will have they will be flawless. It works, no bugs, but it was completely wrong because you don't have the expertise to understand that you completely messed up. I see this with students who overuse Gen AI as well. Suddenly I teach Python and they come up, it's like the first introductory class of Python. Suddenly I see huge block of code and I'm like, you never did this. I mean, I know it. And you can see, and indeed, basically you see that it's ChatGPT who generated a fake data set in the middle, but the person didn't realize because they are not fluent enough to understand this. But sorry, I just wanted to share. Yeah, also.
I fully agree. I think you said it. So I think we need to rethink the way we think about what's valuable. And for me, I love that. And one of the things that are valuable, so you first mentioned expertise, so your ability to judge the output. So this requires you to actually do the effort and not be lazy, because it's very easy. Today, everyone can generate a Python code that works. So where does your value come from? It comes from your ability to go beyond that and wait, I want to bring value. So I will work on understanding every single sentence. And AI actually could be helpful in that. You can ask AI to explain, what are you doing here? Why are you doing that? But that's your responsibility. And the value of that is very high, is your ability not to be lazy. That's something that's very valuable. Another thing beyond expertise and technical expertise, like in coding and others, there's a value that if we take the idea that AI is a teammate, again, with all the caveats in the world, then AI is a colleague. So you should treat it not as a tool, like you would, you learn how to use Excel, so you need to know how to manage the thing, all the formulas and stuff. In this case, AI's language is natural language, English, French, you name it. And so if it's a colleague, you need to be good at managing. And one of the things that we see, so still no results in there, and we're still like investigating qualitatively, but it seems that people who are using AI best are people who are good managers. So I was talking about the filtering out, your ability to judge what's coming out. That's coming from your expertise, you can judge it. But there's also the filtering in. What do you give to AI? And like there's all these like prompting technique, blah, blah. There's one prompting technique is be a good manager. People who are good at giving instructions, who have very clear minds, will be able to prompt AI in a very nice way. And later on, it will be agents and stuff. So there's a much higher value to your ability to be a good manager. Good manager by giving good instructions and by iterating in a constructive way. So when AI gives you an output, you see there's something wrong, you don't straight away say, oh my God, AI is bad. And actually, a lot of people who say AI is bad, you see what they prompted and you're like, but you weren't clear. It's unclear. So many of the things that you asked for, you could do them in 10 different ways. If you wanted one of them, you need to be clear about that. And that's a skill that managers have. Because managers realize that you're working with people, they do mistakes, they have like there's misunderstanding, etc. So the value of being a good manager, giving good instructions, also skyrocketing, is also something that's going to become more and more valuable.
Yeah. So I just keep reflecting also on this and how it will improve our capacity, but also it's more and more powerful. So it's also, it seems that it's more and more powerful to fill the dots, the blanks, if you're not that clear. But it will be interesting to see how it evolves with more powerful tool. Also, because the time is running, and
just about that, it can be the most powerful AGI, you name it. Very often there are 5 different ways of doing it. So AI will have to make a choice. It's not about being powerful. It fills the gap in a certain way. And so if you delegate to it, you're making it do choices. And so if what you want is something else, so it's not about how powerful the AI is. The AI is always guessing. It might become better at guessing, but I don't think this is a good thing.
Oh yeah, I see.
You still need to do the job of like clarifying what you need and what you want.
In particular, if it's filling the connecting the dots in a particular way, you want to,
like by creating fake data. If you weren't clear, you're like, oh, I want to do this. It doesn't know with which data, so just is going to fill it. Is that what you want, really? It's your responsibility to say, do not create data, use this data set. So you need to be clear about your instructions, even if you have the most powerful AI in the world.
One last important thing, because actually I opened the podcast in the introduction with this. It was the emotional response. So in your study, basically people who worked with AI, can you tell us more the result? Maybe you'll say it better than me.
Yeah, I mean, the result is quite simple. It's the last block on in what way is AI a teammate. I invite people to read the paper because I think maybe it's more structured than our discussion, but our discussion is much more fun, again. The last way in which AI looks more like a teammate than like a tool is that people using AI, so people working in teams are happier all over the course of the thing. They start, the 4 conditions start at the same level of happiness. But when we look in the middle and in the end, we see that people working in teams are enjoying the process much more. They're happier, they're more excited, more enthusiastic, and they have less negative emotions, less anxious, less frustrated, etc. And so teams are happier, and people with AI look like teams. They're just happier. And so it seems that AI brings this kind of like fun part of iterating with someone versus just having to dig the thing alone and come up with ideas alone. So that's the result, not to go further.
Yeah, so I was just connecting back to what we discussed with innovation. If bad emotions are really bad in the sense, okay, anxiety can be bad, but also, that when you are in a difficult place, let's say, you might also come with brand new ideas. You might have to force reshaping. I mean, sport, it's exactly this, right? Or you just inflict pain to your muscle, your body in order to reinforce it. Learning is similar as well. You struggle to prepare exam to basically push your cognitive capacity further eventually. So it's just also this thing that I kept coming back to while I see that it's great to improve this emotional response and be rather on the positive side. I'm just wondering on the long term, it's not questioning the result in your paper at all here. It's rather on the extrapolating further. What can be the also adverse effect on the fact that it reduces this negative emotion that might have some benefits?
So that's a great point. So there are several things. The first thing is we only observe that over a task of 4 hours. We're really talking about the emotional response during the thing. And I agree, frustration can be great. I mean, we all learn by being really frustrated, hopeless sometimes. I remember during my first university years, sometimes I was like, wanted to hit my head on the wall by running some equations. So I definitely agree that frustration is important, but it's going to come, and it's already coming at some moments. And I do think I'm coming back to the same point again, over and over again. When we will stop valuing the things that AI does really well and really easily and really cheaply, then people will like learn to be frustrated, like, oh, why are you giving me this thing? They will be frustrated with AI, I think, with time. Because AI has this like very, monotonous. If you don't push yourself, if you don't change the instruction, if you don't iterate, if you don't engage,
I see.
you won't bring any like extra value. You will just get the result that anyone using AI will have, which very quickly will become worthless. It's so easy to produce. And so I do think, the sooner you realize this, the better. The sooner you realize how frustrating AI can be also, the better. But here I think it's more on the aspect of also an emotional response that I think, and there's something we see also in qualitative results, is that AI brings, and we talked about that together also, an extra element that's unrelated to the task, which is, it's always positive, like you said, it's supportive.
Mhm.
And there are a bunch of studies on like people using AI as a therapist, etc. That seems to show that people feel better. So I think AI brings this thing, which is not necessarily a bad thing. At least it can help you. You can iterate. It can allow you to go deeper. Like for me, one of the things that I love about AI is that, and it has this teammate aspect really, is that I have what I call blank page syndrome. I don't know where to start, or sometimes I'm just blocked. And so AI like is good at like on breaking the knot in some places. Like I don't know what to do next, so I just ask it. Sometimes it gives me a really bad response, but it like opens up a new way for me. I'm like, oh wait, okay, I can do it this way. I love people did on Reddit on our paper, and I was reading it. Most of them are coders. One of the guys said it's a super hyped rubber duck. And so I don't know if you know the rubber duck phenomenon. There's a Wikipedia page about that. So all coders, if you go into like a developer's room, they all have like either a puppet or a rubber duck. And the reason is because they realize that when they have a bug in their code, before AI, we're talking like 20 years ago, when they have a bug in their code, very often like they get crazy. And so they go talk with a colleague. They're like, I don't understand because I did this and this and that. And then I did this. And then when they're explaining to their colleague, 80% of the time, they're like, oh my God, now I see what it is. And so, people were like, sometimes I don't have a colleague to explain it to. And so they said, I'm going to explain to my rubber duck my code. And I realized that it works well. So everyone, you can check the rubber duck page, rubber duck effect. They realized that just explaining to your rubber duck how your code works unblocks many, many problems. And so the guy was saying, this is like a rubber duck on steroids. It's like, you can iterate with it, chat, and it's so much better than just a rubber duck that's completely not moving. It just allows you to iterate and to realize, it gives you kind of a mirror of what you're doing, and realize, what is not working, etc. Because it's actually interacting with you and not just listening to you. So I love this image of AI makes you feel better because it's a rubber duck on steroids.
I completely agree and see, and I feel for these bugs in particular, when you don't necessarily have a huge benefit of of going again and again in long page. I mean, yesterday I had a LaTeX slides, very simple code, and I struggled to find where it was missing one of the parentheses within hundreds of lines, and I just gave it at some point to indeed ChatGPT o1, and it found it directly. And here I
So
had very little,
is
very
that good
little benefit.
frustration?
No,
It's
yeah,
not good frustration.
I'm not
There are
sure.
some
Not
bad
sure.
frustration.
For sure. Maybe just to conclude, one last question, because you're working with companies on innovation, on Gen AI, and how do you see what is the importance, or how do organizations have to rethink themselves, taking into account your results, that AI can act as a teammate?
So that's a great question. I had so many other things to say, but since we need to conclude, I think the key element is really companies that are going to understand what kind of shift this means, and in the same way, users need to learn not to be lazy and understand that the lazy output is worthless, and understand that you need to go the extra step. The companies that are going to be the fastest at that are going to ones that are going to reap the most value. So really very quickly understanding that, the things that you used to value 5 years ago inside the company that gave you a promotion, that made you shine inside the company, today they're still valued, but the faster you are at valuing other things, like your ability to connect with others, all the things we were talking about, your ability to communicate your results, your ability to put meaning into things. Because AI is very good at lining up words that sound good, but AI cannot produce meaning. Meaning is always a human thing. And even if you have AGI, it's not about the power of AI. At the end of the day, meaning comes from humans. And so I'd say companies who are going to focus on these like key elements of where does the value of humans come, and also like continuing on the like AI teammate thing, I think the key element is creating new businesses. Like in our paper, we're still at the level where people are using AI, but today we're going to have a lot of agents who might become your new colleague. And so I think the key is really understanding, okay, what does this imply in terms of business that you can produce? So in the same way that when the internet came in, people did MSN, which is like basically a phone on the internet. We were like, okay, what did we used to do? Phones? Well, no, we have internet. We can do like a phone on the internet. MSN died. Why did it die? Because the real value comes when you redefine the way you do business with this new technology. The real value came from Google, from Amazon. People who understood that with this new technology, you can go so much further. And so I think it's the same thing for companies. It's like once you understand what AI does, the idea is not to say, okay, I want to do what I was doing before, but now with AI, I'm going to do MSN. No, realizing that actually you can create whole new businesses with the capability of AI. And once you understand that, AI can be this person who's going to do things for you, or that you're going to use for certain elements, and then realizing, okay, what does this open in terms of businesses? I think that's
and also probably support small entities like the solo entrepreneur kind of thing. I mean, you have your teammate, one teammate, sure, with all the caveats we discussed, point taken again. But I mean, it might also for these startups, small teams, I mean, bring some value, some capacity, some productivity gains, some diversity in some sense, again, with all the limitation we mentioned.
On entrepreneurs, because it's a subject that's dear to my heart. I actually work with entrepreneurs. I also like give some entrepreneurship classes at ESSEC, and I think it's a really important sector. I do push them to use AI, as you said, like as a teammate. And Ethan actually, Maulik, very early on, back in like when ChatGPT, the 3.5 came in, completely rethought his entrepreneurship class around this idea that, today you have much more capacities. There's a company that got created completely by people working part-time and making so many things with AI. And as you said, they work like companies that are made of 10 people when they're just like 1 or 2, because they understood this ability of AI being your employee, you being your colleague, being your employee, basically.
Maybe one last word or thoughts. You said you had a ton, so maybe if you want to conclude with one last thing you have on your mind, on your heart.
No, the thing that I wanted to react on back then is, you said about the professor who did this thing and everyone got answered the answer A. About that, I think it's a very good example of naive usage, because so there's a really nice paper by Anil Doshi and co-authors that where they show, like they use AI to make business decisions. So it's exactly the case that you're talking about. You have 2 potential outcomes, and they try to see how does AI fare, and actually AI is not that bad. But one thing they realize is AI has a huge bias for the first thing that you give it. So like if you say, do you want to choose between A and B or B and A? If you say B and A, it's much more likely to say B. It has a huge bias for the first thing that came out. And so I think that people just very dumbly, I would be really interested
They
to
said
see
A.
like, if
It
your
was A
professor,
and B, and the solution was A. That was suggested in the case study.
yeah, and so I would be really interested to see what if like he changes the naming, like for next class, tell him like the solution A is the one that he was in B, and see if the result stays the same. Maybe it will not completely change, but I think that's it's like simple things like that where you see the caveats. Again, it's AI is flawed and will always be flawed. And so if a student just tried maybe to give B then A, and then saw that the two of them were possible, and then made their judgment. Maybe there was this one student who would say B, and they would stand out and get the best grade in the class. So the value of your ability of thinking critically and being wait, is it biased because they gave it the first one? Is there a sequencing effect? Your ability to not be lazy is what's going to make you stand out and get the best grade and get the best promotion and be the best business. So I just wanted to say that like there are many, many ways in which like we are afraid of AI, but again, it's about how humans use it. Probably used it lazily.